What are you doing, huh? What are you doing? You want to stay? You want to stay here? It's okay. Or not. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. But before we begin this episode, I have a special announcement to make. We got our first dislike! Woo! Weapons is directed by Zach Kreger, and it is, I believe, his second feature film. Peaches, please don't hit the tripod with your toy. Zach Kreger wrote and directed this movie. It is, I believe, his second feature-length film after Barbarian, which I have not seen yet, but I'm hoping to someday. And it was released in August of 2025. This movie slaps. I really enjoyed this movie. Although I will say this, the marketing for this movie, while amazing, it did kind of mislead me a little bit, I felt. Just a little bit. I thought this movie was going to be much more darker and sinister than it actually was, as opposed to this movie being a dark comedy, which it had a lot of comedic elements in this movie. And I suppose if I had seen Barbarian or anything that Zach Kreger had made beforehand, I probably would have been more prepared, so that's on me. But I will say the marketing could have been done maybe just a little bit better. But still, Weapons is a great movie. Upon seeing this for the second time, I feel that I had much better expectations going into this movie because, I'll admit, when I first saw this in theaters, I was slightly disappointed because the way the marketing made this movie seemed to be, not knowing who Zach Kreger was, I thought this was going to be some really disturbing horror movie. I was even telling my mom, who was kind enough to go with me, to prepare herself because it's I have no idea what we're getting into. This could be another Bring Her Back or Hereditary. I didn't know. But it wasn't really like that, although, don't get me wrong, this movie did have some disturbing moments. Now, one thing about this movie that I think it does interestingly is the timeline. This movie is told in a non-chronological order. I believe it is divided into 6 sections, each following a different main character. Now, for a lot of people, this could be a bit disorienting because when we're not sticking to the same main character throughout the entire movie and constantly changing, especially this movie tends to change perspectives during climactic moments, so it becomes a little more disorienting that way because it's kind of part of me's hoping that we stay with this, surge of energy and adrenaline, but at the same time, I mean, I don't really know when else they could have cut it, but still, they cut away usually at the most climactic parts, which is it can be a little upsetting, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really a huge deal for me personally, but it can be a little jarring just jumping between these 6 different characters as we progress throughout the story, but still, I think that for the most part, other than that, it does that job really well, this movie. And I think that this is probably the best way they could have told this story because it gets across so many different perspectives who all have different whereabouts and different knowledge on how this narrative is unfolding, because this movie is quite a mystery, or at least it kind of starts off as maybe it might be a traditional whodunit type mystery, but then it unfolds into something I was not expecting initially, which is another thing that some people may not be too crazy about, is the change in subgenre. Because as this movie progresses, you start wondering with very little explanation, what the hell is going on and why the fuck are these things happening the way they are? I love that in movies, especially in horror movies, where you're trying to figure out what is this thing? And then usually when the reveal happens, it's kind of oh, well, that's okay. I mean, it's not as scary as, my imagination or lack thereof was leading me to believe. But still, I will say initially the reveal was a little underwhelming for me. I will say this movie immediately redeems itself through a wonderful performance by Amy Madigan. Not to mention Josh Brolin and Julia Garner. Sorry, I am terrible with names and I'm constantly having to check my phone and whatnot. Hey, Peach. But yeah, this movie has great performances all throughout. I don't know, it's just a really well-acted movie, and I couldn't have been happier with the performances here, especially from Amy Madigan. Now, when it comes to horror comedy, which I addressed in my review of Send Help, I often find that these movies kind of teeter along a fine line, and sometimes they tend to stumble over into one camp or the other. Either they tend to rely too much on the horror and make it to where there's no comedy whatsoever, or they rely too much on the comedy and they kill off any of the tension that the horror had been previously establishing. Now this movie, I think, kind of does this in an interesting way where there's definitely comedy and horror throughout from start to finish, but I will say that this movie leans more heavily on the horror side throughout the first half of the movie. as things progress and things get crazier and crazier, I do think this movie makes the smart decision to quit taking itself super seriously and leads into the more absurd elements of the story. I mean, the scene in Alex's house where Josh Brolin is fighting, what's his name? Especially during that crazy scene in Alex's house where Josh Brolin is fighting James. It was just so funny, and especially the finale of this movie where, I mean, it just... it goes over the top with the gore, the practical effects, and there's just the sheer absurdity of it all. It leads to a pretty satisfying conclusion, I will say. This isn't really one of those movies where you're not going to know everything by the end of it. You're pretty much going to be satisfied, hopefully, by the ending of this movie, because it does pretty much show you everything. And that's another thing, too. This movie does a great job of showing rather than telling, even as it's like, going in and out of different narratives of different characters. And I think it does in a pretty intelligent way. Another thing, too, about this movie that I really like is the cinematography. They get really creative with a lot of the camera shots here. Not so much so that it gets distracting, but they just have some really cool shots, like especially the shot of the front of Alex's house in the middle of the night, and then the door opens and his mom comes out wielding the scissors. Like, that was creepy, and I think that shot right there perfectly sums up the tone of this movie, where it's like, it is absurd, and in some ways, like, I was laughing nervously, especially in the movie theater, because it's like, what the fuck is this? How is this gonna end? But at the same time, I was like, oh god, she's got scissors. Like, it's the perfect crux of this movie, I think. Especially early on in the movie. This movie has some really dark moments, especially surrounding Archer's character and his arc. I thought that was handled really well, and I thought that it was kind of surprising because, again, by this point in the movie, we're still mostly into the horror elements, but at the same time, it's not like super scary, especially when we switch from Judy Garner's perspective to Josh Brolin's. Things get, I'd argue, substantially less scarier because, I mean, it's the first time we switch different characters, so some of the tension from Judy Garner's characters kind of simmers out, and when we switch to Josh Brolin's character, we basically start over again, and things don't really start off with the most disturbing beginning. It's kind of funny how he fucks up the painting on the house, and also I really like how he investigates his missing son, and also the neighbor's missing daughter as well, by using his construction worker skills to good use. Or is he he's not a construction worker, he's a I forget what the position is, but you know what I'm talking about. He uses his skills that the movie establishes early on to good use. It's like, that's solid writing right there. Overall, like, I will say that moment in the dream sequence, which is probably the trippiest part of this movie, especially when he reaches the bedroom, it was kind of like, I mean, it didn't make me cry, but it was definitely an emotionally hard-hitting moment. And then, of course, immediately after, we get one of the most hilarious line deliveries in the whole movie. But yeah, it was just a really good time overall. I really enjoyed how this movie was not afraid to go into the more comedic moments as well as some of the scarier ones, even if the changing of which character we follow can be a bit jarring. I will say it was kind of a gripe of mine where, especially from when we first switched to James's perspective, we're in the middle of a car chase, an intense police chase where we know like the stakes are high just beforehand, and then it just cuts away. Now, yes, we do get to see the conclusion of this, but it's like 10 minutes later on in the movie. It's a little jarring. And also, like, the constant jumping back and forth between different timelines. This movie isn't like Tenet or anything like that. It's definitely no Christopher Nolan movie. Again, nothing against Christopher Nolan. He just makes some confusing movies and scripts at times. But this movie, it can be a little hard to follow sometimes. Again, not as bad as some other movies, but still. So it's just when you're trying to establish horror or comedy, or any genre for that matter, confusing the audience isn't always the best way to go about it. Not that that's intentional, it's just when you're constantly changing the narrative like this, that's going to happen. But yeah, overall, I don't really have much else to say about this movie. I really enjoyed it, and I think you will too if you haven't seen it yet. I would give this movie an 85. Pretty damn good. Pretty damn great, actually. I fucking really like this movie. I know that Oscar season is coming up, I believe this Sunday. I'm probably not gonna, I don't really watch the Oscars, but I do pay attention to who wins what and whatnot. It's just, I don't really know. I don't want to sit down for 3 hours and watch the whole fucking thing as people talk endlessly. But I do hope that this movie wins some awards. I especially hope Amy Madigan wins Best Supporting Actress. I think she kills it in that role. I would love for a horror movie on this level to receive some awards. And also, later this week, I'm hoping to review another horror movie, which I also hope wins a shit ton of awards, including acting Oscars. I'm going to try this week to review a lot of the big movies coming up at the Academy, but we'll see how that goes. Also, I do apologize. The Bride review, which came out yesterday, I was supposed to have that up Friday, but my editing software decided to shit itself. So, sorry about that. It was a frustrating weekend, but finally I had that fixed, and hopefully I won't run into any more issues with that. But anyways, thank you again so much for being here. Please let me know in the comments down below if you have any ideas for what I should review, anything at all, or even just like any ideas for this channel. I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I know that I'm a small YouTube channel, and I know that most of you are probably, randomly clicking on this video and are like, oh, what's this YouTube channel? And then only make it like a few minutes in or whatnot. But if you have made it this far, I would love any suggestions at all in the comments below. But thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a good day. And hopefully I will see you in the next review. Goodbye.